Hello, everybody. How are you doing? My name is Israel Olumide Isiavwe, aka the Cherub. Welcome to the Cherub TV on a Wednesday for our weekly broadcast called The Kingdom in Motion. Gary, good to see you, my man. How are you doing? One of my favorite people in the world. Good to see you, Gary. And to everybody, again, I say this every single week, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I am so honored, so grateful that you would give me your lunch break pretty much twice a week on a Wednesday at 1 p.m. and on a Friday at 1 p.m. And we do our best here at the Cherub TV to bring you a blend of excellence, real life conversations about issues that are seminal. On a Wednesday, we do the Kingdom in Motion, which is where we take real life issues from the context of how they affect the world as a whole, the human being as a whole, hot button topics in society, and we attempt to ground them in the Bible and from a kingdom perspective. So that the church, the body of Christ, believers understand what's going on the surface, and we can bring the kingdom in motion, literally in real life, to the point of need. And on the Friday, we come back and we have conversations about kingdom principles, scriptural conversations, things that apply to the Bible, the prophetic, the apostolic, things from a kingdom sphere. And we attempt to bring them into a real world space. So in essence, we're doing the opposite journey. On a Wednesday, we start from the world and we bring the world to the kingdom. On a Friday, we start from the kingdom and we bring the kingdom to the world. And today, we have a very, very, very important topic. First of all, would you please help me celebrate my co-pilot today, the lovely Temi, who's with me in the studio. I'm so grateful to all the people who work with me and around me to be able to bring you these broadcasts. And we got Temi today. So in the comment section, could you celebrate her and make her feel welcome for me? Also, as you see on the graphic for today, we will be bringing on a medical doctor who just happens to be my wife, but her reason for being on today is more about her expertise as a GP than it is that she happened to be able to put up with me for in total now almost 16 years, marriage and pre-marriage. And so Dr. Ajoke is going to be coming on, and she's going to be giving us her perspective, and not just her perspective, she's going to be giving us her expertise as a doctor on the issues that we speak about. And so I am excited to hear what she has to say. Righty hoo. So having said that, let us get straight to it. If you're with us today, let me know in the comment section who's here. Also, please do like, share, subscribe, and comment. Interact with us as we go along. And if you know somebody who's been asking you questions, if you've been hearing some stuff, if you've been worried about conspiracy theories, if you have real concerns, because not every concern is a conspiracy theory, we need to balance that out, then get them on board right now, because we are our boy, as the VeggieTales would say. Boy, have we got a show for you. Alrighty, so let's get into it. Just having a little 1 second, just a little bit of issues in the back end. We're trying to find some stuff that's being moved around. It's a newish system, but we will get there. We will get there. Alrighty. So, Timmy, I don't know if you can. Hey, Paul, how you doing, man? I don't know if you can find the. Let's see, where would it be under now? Okay. I think somebody's moved around a lot of our banners, Timmy. I don't know if you can find them, whatever folder they are under, or we may need to just put them up again. I don't know who moved them around. I hope they were not deleted. So we're talking about the COVID vaccine. So the COVID vaccine. Now, the truth of the matter is, no, I can't seem to find it. Okay, that's fine. So the truth of the matter is, this happens to me a lot. It happens so often. Good to see you, Esther. It happens so often that it literally just cracks me up. Where there's a conversation and before it becomes mainstream, I have a lot to say about it. But because it's not mainstream at the time, it doesn't get too much traction. And then afterwards, it suddenly explodes. And then everybody starts to ask me, but aren't you going to say something about it? And I'm like, but like the Americans would say, I've been said something about it long time. Some of you remember that last year, I think this was November or very early December last year, I did do a show about the vaccines. Good to see you, Rodney. Peter, forgive me. I keep mixing you and Paul up. Sorry. So, Peter, how you doing? Good to see you, man. Good to see you, son. And so we did do a show about the vaccine. In fact, let's see if we can remind ourselves. Okay, no, I don't think we have it any longer. Yes, we did. Actually, there it is. So there we go. So this was, I think, in November last year or December. November, December last year. We did do a show about the vaccines. But I understand that it wasn't as controversial. It wasn't the hot topic issue then that it is now. And so I've got a couple of people who said to me, you need to come back and do something exhaustive about it. In essence, don't just, and also we've talked about it in several other shows. And I think many of you know where I stand. But I think there is a need to seriously, with gravity, in one place, have an exhaustive conversation so that we as the body of Christ can get our ducks in a row. We know where we stand. We know what our issues are. And sometimes conversations like this are more about getting the right questions than having all the answers. So I have never pretended to be a know-it-all. And if I've come across that way, I apologize. But I don't have all the answers, and none of us do. And even together, we don't have all the answers. But sometimes conversations are not so much about having all the answers as they are about getting the questions correct. And so that is what we're going to attempt to do today. We're going to attempt to get the questions correct. And if that means we can answer most of them, great. If not, that's fine. And I think I said this a few weeks ago in one of our shows that most demographics, most systems in society do a good job of delegating public facing to people with the ability to articulate and present a position logically, intelligently, and sequentially. So you have think tanks, you have people whose job it is to form a position, to argue, to critique the science and all those other things. And then you have some people whose job it is to say, this is where we stand on A, B, C, and D. And I think the church needs to learn that the ones who speak don't always have to be the ones who think. Sometimes they can be, but we need to be able to go away and knock our heads together in private and have robust conversations and debates. We need to have subcommittees. So for instance, on legal issues, we have lawyers. On medical issues, we have doctors. On cultural issues, we have people who are quote unquote woke, and have rigorous conversations that take into account a wide variety of perspectives, but then leave the articulation to those who have, one, been apprised of the correct information, and secondly, have the ability to present our position in ways that do not compromise our integrity or our reputation. And I say that because I've been screaming this now for about 2+ years, that certain things are being done and said in the church, or from the position of the church, that give us a bad name in the public domain. The world is starting to question. I mean, they've always questioned our faith, and I have no problem with that. The Bible says friendship with the world, enmity with God is friendship with God is enmity with the world. So we get that. It says that the things of the kingdom are foolishness to the carnal man. They can't understand that. We get all that. So we're not asking the world to understand us. But even when we're misunderstood, even if they don't agree with our position, even if our logic from a spiritual perspective doesn't make sense, the one thing they should not be able to point to is a lack of consistency and intellectual integrity. So they can say that's wrong, but they should not be able to say it doesn't make sense from what you say you believe, how you arrived at what was wrong. And that's why I'm excited that in the last few weeks and months now, I'm starting to see believers, some of who are in the medical space and some who are not, pastors, leaders, business people, think tank people, politicians, stand front and center and say, okay, church, let's get our ducks in a row. Let's discuss this in private and leave the public talking to us. Tell us your concerns. Tell us how you feel. Let's debate all the stuff, whether they be fact, fiction, whatever it is. But then when we get to a camera, when we get to a TV screen, when we get to a newspaper, when we get to a public forum, leave the arguing of our position to those who know how to argue our position. Does that make sense? So this broadcast is going to be partially that, to say let's discuss some of those dynamics amongst ourselves, but also let's look at the facts. And also, this is one of those ones where I would love to have people ask questions in the comment section. As usual, if you want to come on the show and say your piece, you're more than welcome to. So, COVID-19. Can you just let me type out COVID-19, please, on the screen, if you could for me? That'd be great. COVID-19. If you've been under a rock, if you are one of those, if one of those people who go hiking for years at a time, if you last were in civilization around this time last year, and you just came back a few weeks ago, we forgive you for thinking that the world is upside down. So there is this pandemic disease called COVID-19. Good to see you, Carlton. That has ravaged society around the world. It's a pandemic because it's an epidemic across several geographical locations. It's everywhere, on every. I think there's no country on the earth now that hasn't registered significant number of cases. We've lost. I've lost count now because I've stopped checking because it was painful checking. But 1 second, let's do a brief check. What's the death toll as of today? I don't like looking at this because it can sometimes breed despair. But as of today, we have, so let's see now, 103 million cases and 2.24 million deaths. That's worldwide. In the United States, which is the number one country, you have 2.65 million cases and 447,000 deaths, followed by India with 10.8 million and 155,000 respectively. The United Kingdom is number 4 on the list. So the vast majority of our viewers come from the US, the UK, and Nigeria, but we also got people from Kenya, South Africa. I get messages from everybody around the world. But the UK, which is probably our joint top market for those of you watching this, we've had 3.85 million deaths and 108,000. So 3.85 million cases, God forbid, deaths, cases, and 108,000 deaths. This is not the first time we've been here, and I've been saying this since last year. If you do your research from 1917 to 1919, we had a similar pandemic called the Spanish flu. For those of you who say, well, if we could call that the Spanish flu, why can't we call this the Chinese flu like some people do? Very simple. Decades ago, the WHO and the United Nations understood that it could be xenophobic to attach the name of a country to a disease that started from that country. And so they changed the naming, they created a naming standard for all diseases, especially viral infectious diseases. And so you don't need to call it the Chinese flu or any of the other, in my opinion, xenophobic tropes for it. We just call it COVID-19. COVID is the code name for the actual virus, and 19 is the year in which that virus was brought to bear. Now, let me just put COVID-19 vaccines now on the stage. And so, as usual, when a disease of this nature starts, The human body has no history with it. The common flu of today started in a similar way, and it killed millions of people in its first few years. And over time, two things happen. Uh, First of all, you develop something called herd immunity, which is where a significant portion of the population, usually between 60 to 70%, have had it, and therefore have built in a sense of immunity against it. The problem is, if as we're starting to notice with COVID, where you can have a disease where you can catch it, be immune for a while, and then recatch it again, then that herd immunity starts to become an issue, because the fact that you were immune 6 months ago doesn't mean you're immune now. And so at any one point in time, how many people in the population are immune to it? However, when a disease has been around long enough, the human body gets better at fighting it. So even if you can catch it multiple times, after a while, that immune system is like, okay, we know what this is. We can kind of handle it a little bit better. But the most effective medical way, if we believe our medical scientists, as we do, is a vaccine. Now, Tim, please type this out for me. If you could, please. A vaccine, I'm going to, you know what, let me give you, I'll give you, first of all, an official definition of a vaccine, and then I'll give you my summary definition of it. So let's look, first of all, at the official definition of a vaccine. And to do this, I'm going to share my screen with you. So if you don't mind, right, so let us see. So if I put this here, and then I share my screen like so. Right, so let's do a Chrome tab, vaccine definition. There we go. Cool. So you should be able to see this on your screen. Let's just check that you can. Great stuff. So, and I'm going to blow it up a little bit so you can see it much more clearly. Cool. So a vaccine is a substance used to stimulate, this is important, the production of antibodies. Now, an antibody or an antibody in the UK, an antibody if you're from the States or similar place, is a substance or a system the human body uses to fight disease. So when a virus, a bacteria, anything that could cause a disease or harm your body enters the body system, your brain and your body, well, not your brain, this is actually not a brain thing, this is a subconscious process. Your body immediately generates something called an antibody, which is a specific chemical, hormone, whatever it is. I'm trying to be simple today. But it generates a substance in your body designed to take out that specific sickness. Some antibodies are slightly generic, some are very specific. In essence, your body says, to fight that, we need to fight it with this. They're tied to your white blood cells. You know, I ain't got time for that today. But just think of it this way. It's a defense. It's like a little soldier or little soldiers your body creates to attack an intruder. And so sometimes you can be exposed to a virus or to a disease and not become infected with it, quote unquote, or not succumb to its symptoms, even if you are, quote unquote, these are technical terms, quote unquote, infected, because your antibodies take care of the problem. When your antibodies are overwhelmed, either by the sheer load of the virus or the disease, or because your body doesn't have the ability to produce the correct antibody to fight that particular thing in sufficient numbers, then you succumb to the sickness, you fall ill, the symptoms come on, and then you become a carrier. You can spread it. And so a vaccine's job is to stimulate your body to produce that antibody so that it can give you immunity against either a very specific disease or a whole bunch of them. Now, this is the important thing. If you look at this now, I'm reading this to you from online, from the Google definition. Vaccines usually use a diluted version of that disease. As it says here, a causative agent, its product, or a synthetic substitute treated to act as an antigen without inducing the disease. Simply put, we take a neutered down version of that same disease, introduce your body to it, or introduce it to your body, so your body starts to produce the required antibodies for it. And that way, when you do actually get exposed to the actual disease, your body says, we know exactly what we are doing here. We know what this disease is. We already have the soldiers that have been trained to fight this disease. Let's go. So in summary, those are how vaccines work. Now, you need to have had a disease long enough to have studied it, to have run tests on it to produce a vaccine. And tell me please write these out for me. There's 3 things you're looking for when you're working with the vaccine. The first is it effective? Meaning, when you give a person this vaccine, does it stimulate the right antibodies? And can you test to see that the antibodies it stimulated do work against exposure to the virus or to whatever causes that disease? It could be a virus, it could be a bacteria, whatever it is. But we're usually talking about viruses here when we talk about vaccines. So that's the first thing. Is it effective? Does it create the right response? The second thing you're looking for is it safe? Because you could create the right response and kill the person from something else. There could be allergies. There could be adverse reactions. There could be, I don't know. The vaccine could create a different problem in the human body that is completely different from what you're trying to solve. So you got to ask the question, is it safe? Now, believers, so those are, if you are an unbeliever, if you're not necessarily a person of faith or Christian, those are your 2 major concerns. Now, as Christians, we have a third. Is it ethical? And, well, actually, you do have a third, whether you're Christian or not. Is it ethical? Period. But, so if you type it out for me, is it ethical? Now, the question is, or the problem is, for believers, our definition of ethical is different than everybody else. Let me repeat. If you are a person of faith, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, whatever faith you believe in, you have a slightly different definition of ethical than everybody else who is not a person of faith. And each faith's definition of ethical itself is slightly different. So we then have 3 questions. And so if you just put all 3 for me now on the stage, just put effective, safe, and ethical. We need to have a vaccine to be trusted that we would want to use, the average person, that is 1, effective, 2, safe, and 3, ethical. Meaning, let's define that word ethical. Let's let Mr. Google or the Oxford Dictionary define ethical for us, because I know I've got some of you listening who are actually intellectuals, so I don't want to get this wrong. So, ethical, pertaining to or dealing with morals or the principles of morality. Pertaining to right and wrong in conduct, being in accordance with the rules or standards for right conduct or practice, especially the standards of a profession. But the key word here is morals or morality. So, for Christians, our sense of morality is what many people are calling into the debate when we ask ourselves, do we want the vaccine or not? And we will deal with that. So we're going to ask those three questions: effective, safe, ethical. Now, I want to start from ethical and work my way down to effective for the purpose of our conversation. Dr. Ajoke is going to be joining me in about 10 to 15 minutes, so stick around for that as well. Now, I think my position is very clear on where I stand on a lot of what I call the conspiracy theories. I don't want to go over those again. We can just, you take that off the screen now, Tammy. So that's ethical now, just ethical. And I hate repeating them because I think they give them oxygen, but we need to know what we're dealing with to be able to either agree or disagree with it. So, and especially, I should say this as well, and this is not race baiting, this is not tribalism. It is a researched and peer-reviewed fact that COVID-19 disproportionately affects people of minority ethnic origin, especially the black population. I forgot the statistics and I don't want to repeat them wrongly online, so I'll check them and I'll mention them before we end the show today. While my wife's talking, I will take a quick dive into my laptop to get them out for you. But we are significantly more likely to catch it and extremely significantly more likely to die from it or have life-changing adverse symptoms. I have friends, colleagues, acquaintances who have suffered everything from failed kidneys and livers to some of them have suffered strokes, heart attacks. I'm talking about horrible, life-altering adverse reactions to COVID. Many of them have been Christians. In fact, most of the people I know who've had those adverse reactions personally have been Christians. A handful have died, including some pastors that I know personally. And in the early days, there seemed to be this argument between faith and science. There seemed to be this unspoken perception among some that because you were a Christian, you could just ignore the effect of this thing and the science wouldn't apply to you. My response was always this: I'm a Christian. I will not go and stand in front of a train at the London Overground and say, well, I can't die because, I'm a believer and God will look after me. In fact, Jesus it was who told us when the devil told him to jump from a high temple position. Jesus said, don't tempt the Lord your God. It is written, thou shalt not tempt the Lord your God. It is not faith to irresponsibly and ignorantly flirt with danger. Let me repeat. It is not faith to irresponsibly and in my opinion, unwisely flirt with danger. Secondly, nowhere in scripture are we told that being a Christian excludes you from everyday principles of human life. Beverly asks a question: how come those in Africa are not as affected as much if COVID affects black people more? That is a very good question. One that I answered in a previous show last year. Let me take some time to address that, but I don't want to go there because we're talking about vaccines. Do I want to go there because of time? Because first of all, it does affect people in Africa, number one. It does affect them. Number two, Africa initially took a lot of draconian measures against it. And countries in Africa could take some measures with a level of enforcement that some Western countries refused to take. But perhaps most importantly was this. We never reached pandemic state in the African countries. By the time the African countries were shutting down or taking mitigation measures, their baseline of cases was far less than here in the West. Of course, we know the virus originated in China, the Wuhan province, and the vast majority of people who traveled with it came to first Europe and then to the United States of America and other, what's what I'm looking for now, and other industrialized nations. By the time that thing started in Africa, Africa had a head start. Africa had a what's what I'm looking for now? In essence, Africa was shutting down with 50 cases in an entire country. In the West, we were starting to shut down with 50,000 cases. I will say this as well, because people forget when they argue with me about these things that they're also talking to a Christian. I do think there is a spiritual component to Africa as well. Africa as a mass turned to heaven to cry about these issues as well. There is a difference between personal intercession, corporate intercession, and national intercession. We had African presidents and premiers inviting prayer and wide-scale repentance and intercession. Again, at the beginning of the journey. I'm coming there, Maureen. Please put Maureen's comment on the screen. Great one. I was actually coming there. Thirdly, Africa's industrial system, and Maureen's talked about a piece of this there, but it's slightly bigger, does not look the same here in the West. Let me explain. You don't have a caste system among black people in Africa on a racial boundary the same way we have in the West. When the lockdown started, the vast majority of people who got to work from home were white-collar jobs, blue-chip jobs. In essence, the kind of job you can do from a Zoom screen. Or the kind of job where your employment contract gives you levels of protection that mean you can't just be dismissed for not working. The government came out with schemes to help people with their jobs. The problem is, there were two kinds of people who couldn't take advantage of working from home. One were people who were termed essential workers, aka doctors, nurses, medical staff, transport workers, first responders, teachers, and people working 0-hour or low protection contracts. The guy working at Tesco, the guy packing your vegetables, the one cutting your meat. So the lawyer can work from home and draft contracts on Zoom and send to their partner. The meat guy can work from home. Well, guess what the overwhelming majority of people working those jobs are in terms of their ethnicity? Minorities, black, Asian, people of that nature. And so when you couple one, the absence of wide-scale divine intervention nationally, with a late head start on the explosion. So like I said, Africa was locking down with 50 cases. The UK, the US was locking down with 50,000 and more. And thirdly, the fact that in the places where the baseline had already exploded, um, the people who were the most exposed to it because they couldn't isolate as much as everybody else were people who look like me. Then you have what we have. You can also add the fact that, the reasons, I give an example. Schools in Nigeria, where I was born, have been shut down for the vast majority of the year so far, with a few exceptions and pockets of opening. Here in the UK, in the States, and in other places, as soon as the cases came down a little bit, because we wanted people to go back to work. I've talked about this before. I don't want to pontificate about this. Because our God was mammon and not people's lives, we needed to find a way to keep our economy going, or so we thought, which has backfired, because if we'd handled it right the first time and gone through the pain in one go, we might be a lot better off now. But we keep having places like gyms. I mean, you're not going to see, first of all, there's no great gym culture in Africa. And even where they are, people were at home because they were afraid. Schools were shut. But all the places where these things happen, gyms, schools, clubs, pubs, sports events, all these things have had a lot more traction in the West than they have had in the motherland. So, let's move on. I hope that answers your question, Beverly. But the reason why I pointed that out was this. No other group more than the minority Christian group needs to get the question of the vaccine right. We are at the most, in my opinion, the most danger if we don't come down on the right side of this conversation. And this is why. First of all, we have Christians who already have the faith versus medicine question. Secondly, a whole lot of the negativity, valid and invalid. There is some valid negativity about the vaccines, in my opinion, and there is a whole lot of invalid negativity about it, what I call conspiracy theories. But 70 to 80% of them are targeted along the lines of faith or moral ethic standards. In essence, the person who is more likely to not want to take the vaccine because of something they heard is far more likely to not want to take it because of an ethical problem than a safety or an effective problem. So I'll give you an example of one of the things people mention, the fact that fetal matter, meaning tissue from aborted or preterm dead babies, was used in the research and in the design of the vaccine. Now, I've got a doctor here who's coming on in a minute. She'll tell us whether or not that's true and where we stand on that. But it is one of the things out there. Well, if you have no problem with abortion on faith or moral grounds, then that's not going to concern you. You're going to see it simply as, well, when full human beings die, they donate their organs for research. So what's the difference? However, if your faith or your morality draws a line where abortion is concerned, that's an extra factor for you to consider that somebody else would not need to consider. Of course, we've been taught about how it's the seed of the enemy, it's the mark of the beast. I think I've dealt with that already. I don't want to go back there. That's not true. That's false. That's silly. It's stupid. It's unbiblical. It's a sign of a lack of understanding of the Bible and eschatology. Go read Revelation again with the Holy Spirit. But these issues mean that more than any other demographic, minority Christians have the biggest issue with the vaccine, but we are also at the greatest risk, because not only are we part of the ethnicity that is the most exposed to it. You may be a lawyer and a partner in a firm, but if your cousin is a train driver, he is more exposed to it. Also, our culture is less likely to respect the request to stay away from family and friends. Our culture just by default places more of an emphasis on community and meeting and family and things of that nature. And also, we also have the argument of church and whether or not we should stay at home and social distance, or we should be allowed to meet and congregate at the same levels we have. And I'm not debating whether these are right or wrong. I'm just saying, understand that if you are a minority ethnic group Christian, your natural culture, the value system of our community, and the questions surrounding our faith positions make us more likely to be exposed to this thing and also make us more at risk of it when we are exposed. Also, things like diabetes and high blood pressure and many of the comorbidities, asthma, sickle cell anemia, many of the greatest comorbidities for COVID, the things that make you more likely to either die or be severely ill if you have COVID, are far more prevalent with ethnic minority and especially the black community. In essence, and I'm going to bring Dr. Ajoke on here, we either are the ones who need the vaccines the most, or we are the ones who need to be able to say why it is not for us and understand that if we are not going to take it because it's not for us, then we need to be on our P's and Q's. In essence, we need to make an intelligent, measured, and dispassionate assessment with information from those of us in the system, like the doctor you're about to hear from, to tell us the quiet parts out loud, if necessary, so that we know we need this thing, or, well, this thing is not for us, so what do we do to make sure that, in essence, we can't just say, well, God will look after me. No, God won't look after you if you jump in front of a train. If you refuse to eat and you die of hunger, God's not going to look after you that way. So we need to take responsibility to make intelligent decisions, guided by both faith and the wisdom God gave us that is not incompatible with faith. And we need to weed between conspiracy theories and legitimate concerns, balance out the information, and then own our decision. And with that being said, please welcome the lovely Dr. Ajoke Israel-Isiavwe, who also has the distinction, well, I have the distinction of being her husband, not the other way around. So, good to see you, baby. How you doing?
I'm okay, thank you.
Cool. So you heard my soliloquy, you heard my rant. I did my best to, you know where I stand, and so, oh, you look beautiful. Doesn't she? That babe is amazing. She's absolutely beautiful, and I love her. And she's beautiful on the inside and the outside too. Anyway, so let me stop making people puke. So do you want to introduce yourself real quick for those who don't know you? Timmy, you can take off that screen banner now. Just tell them real quick who you are, what you do, and why they should listen to you when you talk about this.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Depending on your time zone, it could be good morning, it could be good evening. But I'm so happy to be here today. My name, as you've heard, is Dr. Ajoke Israel-Isiavwe. I'm a medical doctor in the United Kingdom, and I'm a practicing GP at the moment. I've been a medical doctor for about 10 years now. And so my line of practice is a general practitioner. And so it's great to be here. And I was actually amazed listening to you, hearing what you had to say about the vaccine. I don't think I have anything else to add.
Well, you have to, because you're the medical doctor here. So something that I never will be at this stage of my life anyway. And I thought it was necessary for them to hear some things from someone who is actually on the front lines. And you have been on the front lines. You've been working through the pandemic. We made a decision as a family that we were going to trust God to look after us as essential workers, but we weren't going to shirk our duties. We weren't going to take ourselves out the line of fire because we were scared for ourselves. And God has looked after us. In the interest of full disclosure, I want everybody to know I have had COVID-19. I don't know if anybody was unaware about that. I had it sometime between the end of October and the beginning of November last year, if I'm not mistaken. Other members of our family, for instance, my mother at the time was isolating with us, and she came down with it as well. Now, my wife did not test positive for it, but we have reason to suspect she might have been maybe an asymptomatic carrier in the past. So as a family, we've experienced COVID personally. So I want you guys to understand that, right? So this is not armchair punditry. And like I said, also she's got the medical expertise about it. So baby, so talk to us first of all. Let's deal with the ethical question. Maybe you could put that back up now. Let's deal with the ethical question. I'm gonna be an angel's advocate here. I'm gonna ask some questions that I know the answers to, but I'm just gonna ask them because people are asking them. So, is the government trying to control us with a vaccine?
Okay. A very good question. And just to address something that you said at the very beginning, yes, I did have COVID. I did have COVID, and I do have the antibodies. I tested for the antibodies
Okay.
after having an episode of loss of smell, loss of taste, and the works. So it's not something you want to experience if you haven't had COVID yet. And yeah. So to answer your question, is the government trying to control us? And I think that question is a very interesting question, and sometimes it makes me wonder where people got, or shall I say get, because things are still going out in the media, get the information from. And it has come to my understanding that people don't do their research, and unfortunately, we live in a day and age where people want to be fed, and they don't want to find out what's going on for themselves. And so I think the reason people feel that the government is trying to control us is because they have been passed down information from sources that they haven't tested, sources that are not trusted or tested, and it has been passed on from different social media sites, WhatsApp, you name it, Google, the internet. It's a free world. So is the government trying to control us? The answer, my answer is no. The government is not trying to control us. But the government has a pandemic. The nations have got a pandemic at hand. Where millions of people have died. People have lost lives. Jobs have been lost. People are getting ill. The healthcare system has become overwhelmed. And I think it will be very irresponsible of the government not to take any action that they have taken in terms of providing a solution, or what they believe is the best solution, the quickest solution to end this pandemic so that more lives are not lost. And for me, I think it's actually a great thing to realize that we have a government that actually does care about human lives.
Okay, I hear you loud and clear. Now, let me tell you what some people are going to say. You're not woke. You're not in these streets. You don't understand. You're sheep. You've been brainwashed. You have, like somebody told me once in a comment section of one of my videos, you're too intelligent for your own good, or you're not discerning. Now, let's make this clear. No government of any human nature is equivalent to the kingdom. Every human system is fallible. Now, I'm saying this. She doesn't have to say it. I will. I'm the troublemaker in the family. I understand that every humanistic system has less than noble agendas in how it conducts its overall policy system. In essence, if it's not a theocracy, I think God has shown us over the last 5 years that democracy is not his preferred system of government. We've seen democracy fail in several ways, whatever side of the political spectrum you're on. So we're not saying that the government is God's. The government is prophetic and it's in line with God and God is using it. No, that's not what we're saying. The question is this vaccine specifically being designed to be used as a system of control? Not can there be unintentional or side effects of, because I agree, I do have a question, I do have a concern about how civil liberties can be interrupted so easily now by the government in the name of an emergency. I also think the church's response and the conservative movement's response to this has made it worse, because they can now tell us, you guys were irrational, therefore we need to protect the country more from you. But I get all that. The question is this being designed is this a hoax, as we were told? Was it 5G, first of all? And And is this the mark of the beast? And now are these vaccines being used to control us in terms of, are we being implanted with things to surveil us and things of that nature? Okay, so can you talk real quick about the process by which a vaccine is developed? Because one of the things people talk about is this is the fastest a vaccine has ever been produced, and that's true. My response to that would be, I can get to London faster now than I could 100 years ago. My internet is now the fastest it's ever been. So the fact that something was quick doesn't necessarily mean it is evil or nefarious. However, one of the, in my opinion, valid pieces of concern is, are we sure that all the I's and T's have been dotted on the way to get here? Could the speed which was called for by, so let me just put speed, let me just type out, was it too fast? Was it, or were the vaccines produced too quickly? Something of that nature, Temi. So talk to us about the process of vaccine development. How can we as the public feel safe in the knowledge that this wasn't just a quick job that is going to backfire on us?
Okay. Thank you. Very good question. I just want to ask, if you don't mind, just taking your volume up a bit. I've heard of what you said, but if your volume can be increased.
Sure. Nobody said that to me earlier. All right, that's cool. I wish you guys had told me, so my volume's not loud enough. All righty, carry on, baby.
Okay. So were the vaccines produced too quickly? I think this answer is actually in twofold. And like you rightly mentioned, there was a situation in our hands where we had to act and very quickly. And so we didn't have the luxury of spending years in trying to produce a vaccine. Yes, we do know that it does take years to produce a vaccine that we can classify as safe and effective. But in this situation, there was a pandemic at hand, killing so many people, and so we had to take action very quickly. Now, I think this was around April 2020. This was when they started working on producing the vaccines in different nations. So in Europe, in America, in China, different nations were trying to produce their own vaccines. At the moment, there are over 270 vaccines that are currently under research.
Say that again.
There are about 270 vaccines that are currently on developing research. Mm-hmm. But at the moment, only 9 have been released worldwide, and they only
pause, because I please, Temi, can you tap that out, please? Because this is important for those of us who have the valid question, because I think this is a valid question. So 230 vaccines are currently in process, or have been processed since April last year. Only 9 have actually been approved for use.
Yeah.
So somebody in the comment section, do me 9 over 230 for the percentage for that. Let me do it
270.
myself.
270, not 270, not 230.
Okay, so let's see real quick. So if I do 9 divided by 270, that is 3.3%. So roughly about 3.3% of the vaccines that have entered the system of development have been approved so far. I think that's important to know because it tells us they're not just giving everybody a license. So carry on, please. Sorry about that. I just wanted to stress that.
Oh yeah, I think that was very important. I don't mind you interrupting. It's okay. And so in the UK, we currently have 2. Now, the difference between the usual process of developing vaccines and this one that has happened with the COVID-19, few things to mention. The first thing that we want to mention is that COVID-19 or the COVID virus comes from a group of viruses called the coronaviruses. Now, the coronaviruses are not a new type of virus on Earth. COVID-19 is a new type of virus. Yes, it's called a novel virus for that reason. But the concept of a coronavirus is not new. And so these are the technicians' jobs, the virologists. That is their day-to-day life. They go into labs and they do research on a daily basis.
Sorry, say that again. Sorry, again. I'm sorry. My job is to do the annoying husband thing of interrupting you. So COVID-19 is new.
Yeah.
but it belongs to a family of diseases that has been around with us for a long time. Right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, if COVID is a tangerine, we have oranges that have been around for a while.
Yeah.
They're slightly different, but they're both citruses. In essence, a lot of the research and understanding in developing medicines for that family of, so in essence, coronavirus has been around for a while. This is a
Yeah.
new type of coronavirus.
Exactly.
Okay. So, in essence, you're saying those who were developing the vaccines were not starting from zero. They already had
Yeah.
years of research and similar things to work with, right?
Yeah, but not for the COVID. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So I
Okay.
don't want
So,
people thinking that, oh, they have been working on research for years, planning COVID. No, COVID, like you rightly said, it's all new. And so
okay.
they
So,
had
so
that
sorry,
for,
sorry. So, one more thing. So, that conspiracy theory that says there's been movies from 5 years ago that spoke about this exact same scenario, it was planned because there's literature and movies. In essence, while COVID-19's peculiar characteristics are unique to it, this kind of disease is not new.
the family, the coronavirus
Ye-
family that
Cool.
affects the
So the
respiratory is not
movies
new.
that people refer to of a pandemic like this or Bill Gates predicting it was not because these people were the ones who designed it. They
No.
just said, see, there's an orange there, there's a grapefruit there, there's likely to be a tangerine coming.
Yeah.
And they looked and they saw that each one that came seemed to be slightly different from the last one
Uh-huh.
and seemed to be worse than the last one because that's how
Yeah.
epidemiology works. Diseases adapt to the human body's ability to fight them.
Exactly.
So we talk
Yeah.
about variants, for instance. You come down with this kind of malaria, the parasite starts to evolve to make itself more resistant. So the later versions of that family of diseases are usually likely to be worse than the earlier ones. Would you agree with me about that,
Yeah.
baby?
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah. So yeah, great. That's great stuff that you've added. And so when you look back, I don't know if you can remember. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but there was this whole hype about SARS. This was another type. This also belongs to the same family, and there was also a Middle East, Asia type virus
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
SARS, MERS, and all that. So these were years ago, but you haven't heard of any vaccines that have been produced because once you can't get past a certain stage, it has to stop. So in the case of COVID-19, we thank God that the wisdom has been released and there's been loads of financial finances made available.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I was saying, in terms of previous types of vaccines, where you can spend months and go through one trial and then move on to the next. The COVID-19 vaccines have run on what we call a parallel program. So basically, they're running them simultaneously as opposed to spending a big chunk amount of time and then finishing this stage and moving on to the next. So they were running them on parallels. And
So
so every
pause.
vaccine, yeah,
Sorry, again.
it's okay.
You're a doctor, they're not. I'm married to one. My dad's a doctor, so I kind of understand some of what you're saying. So talk about those stages first of all, because most people don't understand this, that when you're developing any kind of medicine, especially a vaccine, there are stages that you go through. And you're right, usually you finish one stage and you move to the next. But you're saying these 3 or 4 different, I think they're 3 or 4, right? If I'm not mistaken. These 3 or 4 different stages were all done concurrently because of the danger. In essence, the fact that this thing was so dangerous meant governments had to move in a strange way. So what are these stages? Real quick, first of all, talk to us about that, please.
Okay, so I'll just run through them very quickly. So there's 4/3 stages. So the first stage is the preclinical stage, which is where they just do things like on animal tissue and that, just to test a few things. And then you move on to this. Then there are 3 for the clinical phases. There are 3 clinical phases: phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 is where you get only a few hundred people and you test on them, just to test for basic side effects and all that. And then phase 2, you increase the number of people to actually begin to measure things like immune responses. And then you move on to phase 3, which is where you get loads and loads of people. I can't remember the exact number, and I want to be very careful not to give information that is not correct, but I think it was something between I'm not sure if it was about 40,000, but please don't quote me on that. In the last trial, and then they get people, and they also have what we call a placebo. So basically, people are in the last stage, they get people who actually get the vaccine, and they have people who actually get what we call a placebo, which is not the vaccine. It can just be basically salt water or whatever, just to see. And they measure the reactions, they measure the responses of the people who have had the vaccine and the response of those who had what we call the placebos. And what happens is that they look at side effects, they look at has anything dangerous happened, they look at so many things. And it's a very strict process. And then it goes through a body called the Medicines Regulatory Body and all that, and then it is approved. I know that because of the short time that we had to bring this vaccine up, so we had to release it after it had gone through this scrupulous process of effectiveness and safety. So those are the two things that the medical association has to look at before we can then say yes, we want to give the vaccines out. But we had loads of volunteers who had gone through this process so that you and I could get the vaccine.
Okay, so let's go back and
just volume up a little bit, please.
My volume is still okay, but nobody else is complaining. Why are you guys keeping quiet today? Let me know if you can't hear me. It's important that you hear me. Alrighty, let me see. Let's see if I can sort this out. So, is that better?
It's a little bit better.
You want it higher?
Yes, please. But
okay.
It's not that bad.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a rare time when my wife tells me she wants me to speak louder. So I am going to record today's show as proof that I don't shout. I'm just joking. So now, first of all, is this information from this clinical trials, is it publicly available?
Yes, it's in everything, and that's how I was able to get the information. Yes.
So people can actually go do. Yeah, go on. So go on. Carry on.
Yeah. You can actually do your own research, because that's how I do my own. That's how I get my information, not from WhatsApp or Facebook, or I don't know what else do we have these days. No, I don't get my information from that. So if it's being made available to me, it is available to you.
Okay. So, and I'm asking that question because most people don't know that. And some don't know because they're lazy, but I think some don't know it because they just don't know it, that you can, and that's why for those of you who asked me this question way back in November when we did the first show, I said I wasn't ready to take a position because I hadn't yet looked through the information for myself. One quick second. Since then, I have. And it's just interesting that most of the people who spread fear or who ingest the fear being spread don't want to take the time to actually review the source material.
Yeah.
Because now I haven't finished going through all of them. I must be honest. My wife would tell you, my year has been kind of crazy. But I've seen enough to literally dismiss out of hand 70 to 90% of the stuff going on around. Hey, brother, good to see you, Apostle One.
Hello, Apostle One. Good to see you.
So, folks, WhatsApp and Telegram and Signal and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are not approved sources of information on any issue, especially an issue that could be life or death. Secondly, because someone gets on a video, and I know you said, but your wife says she's a doctor, well, fine, but that's why I asked her the question, can you review this? And says they are a doctor and may have any form of political or religious persuasion biasing what they're saying, and say something does not make it true or valid more so than ever before. it's scary to me that at the time where the information is most accessible in history is also the time where people are least likely to go access it. And the same people who accuse you of not being woke, of being a sheep, of not being enlightened. Pastor Taffrey, good to see you, sir. Pastor Jama, good to see you, sir. Those same people who accuse those of us who use our brains of either not being deep spiritually or not being enlightened are the ones who won't even bother to do their research. Okay, so we've dealt with. Now, let's deal with a practical concern, something that, in my opinion, is a valid concern. Does medical science usually take a while to work through the kinks when a new medicine or new vaccine is first released? If so, in essence, because like I said, like I told you when it first came out, my own personal view was, while I didn't think anybody was trying to impregnate me with Satan's sperm, I didn't think it was the mark of the beast. I didn't think the government was trying to plant a camera inside me so they could see my house and watch me do my stuff at home. I did feel that I expected there to be some teething problems. And my thought process was maybe I should wait till other people take it for a while and work through the teething problems, like when a computer goes through an upgrade. It takes a week or two for the bugs to be identified and then fixed with a patch. Is that sensible? If not, why? And if it is, why shouldn't we be worried about that in the long run?
Okay. So, of course, it's very sensible. It's human nature to want to protect yourself. No one just wants to, because everyone, I know there were lots of prophecies about, something coming up, and I know you, for one, prophesied about this before the manifestation came. But the honest truth is that, the COVID-19 just came. We were all going to the beach, planning parties, planning weddings, booking flights for holidays, and this came to us suddenly. It disrupted our lives. And so it's okay. It's a normal human reaction for you to pause and say, actually, what is going on? In fact, if you did not pause to say what is going on and suddenly there's a vaccine, maybe I might be a little bit worried to say, why aren't you actually using your brain? Because we have brains for a reason. We have brains to think. We have brains to analyze. And so that is why we then analyze the information that we have, and then we weigh up our options, and then we make a decision. So that's why it's very essential for us to use information and use wisdom to make decisions. So I think it's a very valid point. You want to see, you want to watch and see, you want to wait and see the side effects and see what happens to other people. But the only thing I would say is, whilst you're waiting and you're wanting to see what will happen to other people, as long as you are aware that there is a chance that you can catch the virus whilst you're watching and waiting, as long as you're well informed, then by all means, it's your prerogative and it's your choice to make that decision. But I don't think it's unsensible, no.
Okay. So in essence, for instance, I wouldn't qualify for a vaccine anyway. I'm not in the age. Well, I don't know about. I'm not sure about now. Last time I checked, they're prioritizing people above a certain age, people with certain risk factors, frontline medical workers, and then I think they're starting to consider adding high public exposure people like professional athletes, politicians, things of that nature. Sadly, I don't belong to. Well, not sadly. I don't belong to any of those categories. Now, first of all, actually, I don't know the answer to this question. Please answer for me. Can a normal, healthy person who doesn't belong to any of these categories just go ask for the vaccine right now? So if I wanted it, could I get it today?
But if you don't belong to any of the priority groups, and I think there are about 7 or 8, no, you cannot get the vaccine if you don't belong to any of the priority groups, no.
Okay. So I find it interesting. When I ask that question, I find it interesting that the vast majority of the people who are the most vocal advocates against it can't even get it. So they have nothing to lose. And I'm not accusing them of being cynical. I mean, I would never do that. I would never accuse another person of having ulterior motives. No, I would never. But Isn't it interesting that most of the people who are saying, don't take it, it's this, it's that, it's whatever, can't get it if they want it. So they have nothing to lose by telling you, I'm not going to take it now. Like me. One, I've had it, so I have at least a few months of immunity, I'm told. Secondly, even if I hadn't had it, I couldn't go unless I told a lie. And I'd probably be caught.
Yeah.
And so for those who, in essence, by the time the vast majority of us, and when I say young, if you're young, I think it's 65, isn't it? That's the age up. That's the age limit, or is it 60?
I think they've taken it. I think they've taken it down. I'm not sure if it's 50 or 60. I think they keep adding.
Okay, it started at 65. I think it's probably down to either
80.
60.
It started at 80.
At 80, sorry.
Years.
Pardon?
80 years was
80 years, and where is it now?
Above was the first priority group.
Yeah, and then where is it now? Roughly 60 thereabouts.
The last time I think it was 65, but I'm not sure if they've added 50.
Last time I checked, I think it was 65. So by the time the majority of us who are, most of the people watching this show, most of you are going to be somewhere between 20 and 60. By the time most of us can get it, some of those kinks we should have been worked through. And I've seen information about adverse effects. It seems like there's a transparency process about it. And so it's the same thing. You buy a phone early. Those of us who are technology people, you understand. You buy a phone early, you understand you will have a few bugs. So you have to ask the question, what's more important to you? And this is where I think the issue becomes. If you're 40 or younger, you probably, unless you have other comorbidities, in which case then you will qualify for the vaccine anyway. The chances are, please don't say that man said I'll be fine. If you catch it because you were silly, I denounce or I reject all liability. Please, right? I wear my mask. My wife would tell you, my car battery, I tried to start my car yesterday. The battery wouldn't start because I've been home. I've not gone anywhere in almost 3 weeks. I only leave my house when it's absolutely necessary. My kids are not in school right now, and so I have no reason to go anywhere. I'm putting on weight because I'm just stuck at home, trying to run up and down stairs and do press-ups. I am socially distancing, except I have to do something in the community because of my role as a minister. And I'm wearing my mask, and I'm looking after myself and my family. So please do the same. But I had it, I was fine. So if you are in the class of people who are not likely to die from it or have serious issues from it, you probably can't get it anyway. So lower your voice. The people who we need to really be shouting with this about are those who are old enough or do have either a higher level of exposure to it because they're medical staff or frontline workers, or are young but have other existing conditions that put them at risk. You have a decision to make between the risk of you getting infected with the virus and dealing with the symptoms of the issues, and the risk of, quote and unquote, there being an adverse effect from it. And to you, I say that is a valid conversation. Nobody can make that decision for you. What are you more worried about? COVID's effect on you, or a potentially undiscovered side effect at the moment? If you have a conversation with your doctor, you pray, you stand on your word, you come to the conclusion, I know the risk, I'm going to sit my backside at home, I'm going to wear my mask, wash my hands, stay away from groups of people, and I don't want the vaccine. Nobody should force you, in my opinion. Nobody should make you feel, nobody should pressure you. No TV show, no government initiative should make you feel like, that's me personally. And nobody should definitely take away your freedom of choice about that. But just be aware that you are literally flipping a coin.
Flipping a coin, yeah, that's the word.
So that's between you and God and your family that you discuss with. Let's move on. So there is this question of fetal matter being used in the vaccines. Can you clear this up for us? So apparently, now I mean the full conspiracy says babies are being killed to make the vaccine. We know that's not true. However, there are abortions going on every day around the world, whether we like it as Christians, whether we agree with it. I personally don't. I believe in the sanctity of human life from the womb to the tomb. But I also live in a world where there are rules and legal laws, and we know it is legal. And so we need to balance the two, our faith and how we propose it, with the understanding that it does happen and people have been given the right to do it. And unlike some people, I'm not going to go kill someone because they killed, quote unquote, a baby. So for people who've asked me before, you seem to be too laissez-faire about abortion. No, I'm actually planning to come back and do an entire show about abortion either next week or the week after, so stay tuned. If we finish this conversation today, next week is abortion. If we don't, it'll be 2 weeks' time. And you may be shocked to hear where I stand for those of you who think I'm a right-wing Marxist. But I live in a real world and I deal with it's a reality. So as a Christian, I have to figure out my way around the reality while I'm trying to change the hearts of people and not just legislation. But there are abortions, but there are also stillbirths. There are spontaneous abortions, which is actually, I don't like that word because it makes it sound like the person actually killed the baby. No, it doesn't. The baby just died in the womb. In essence, there's no shortage of fetal tissue. The unfinished baby forming in the womb. And it has been a discussion for decades before COVID as to how ethical it is to use fetal tissue in medical science. So please help us understand. We're not asking you for your position on it ethically. Just explain to us how it works medically. How and why is fetal tissue used in medical research?
Okay. So I think with regards to what you have mentioned, I think I had mentioned at the very beginning that to answer your question about the fetal, what the whole thing about the fetal matter used in the development of the vaccine. I think I had mentioned it earlier at the very beginning about there being in the whole world at the moment, total of 9 vaccines available, and in the UK too, the Oxford one, which is the Ventral, and also the Pfizer one. Most of the information that I have about the vaccines are the ones in the UK, so the 2 that are being used in the United Kingdom at the moment. Now, the Pfizer one has nothing to do with any, humans or whatever. It's synthetic and it's just made from.
Okay, pause for a second. Temi, can you tap that out on screen for us? Pfizer vaccine has no fetal tissues. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
So Pfizer vaccine, according to Dr. Ajoke, no fetal tissue. Please type that out. So we know at least one vaccine, we can remove that ethical concern if we have it. Carry on, please.
So the Pfizer vaccine had been produced by just an S protein from the virus, and we can talk about that if you want at some point in the show. But I think the vaccine that had made people turn their eyes or make ears twitch is the Ventral one. So I just want to make that distinction. They're actually, so it's not one vaccine in the whole world. They're quite different. And so the Ventral vaccine, or the one that was developed in Oxford, there was, I know that I think it was in 1973, there was a fetus that they said was had a medical abortion. So basically, the fetus was not aborted for vaccine reasons or research reasons, but it was clearly a medical reason, which I do not know what the medical reason is. But even the Oxford vaccine has no fetal tissue in the vaccine, but the information that I have researched on is that a cell line from that fetus was used in developing the vaccine, but it's in clear words and in black and white that none of these vaccines have any fetal material inside. Now, to answer the last question.
Okay, so pause. So let's get that straight, because I'm trying to work with Temi behind the scenes to make sure we get the right. Okay. We want to put the right information on the screen. Okay. So and again, like I said, I know some of the answers, but I want my audience to hear it like, So in essence, you are not aware of any vaccine at all that actually has fetal tissue inside the vaccine.
There is no vaccine that has fetal tissue inside. There
Okay,
is
so
no
Timmy, please put that up for us first. No vaccine has fetal tissue in it.
None of the COVID vaccines, yes.
Yes, no COVID vaccine has fetal tissue in it currently. As of, what's today's date? 3rd of February, 2021. So Timmy,
Yeah.
please put that up first on the screen first before we move forward, because these are important. All right, cool. Now, you're saying of the two in the U, so the issue is not whether or not somebody is putting a dead fetus inside you. The issue is, was the dead fetus used as part of the testing or development process for the vaccine, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Timmy, please put that on the screen. The issue, or just put the issue is whether or not fetal tissue was used as part of the testing / development process.
Oh gosh, poor Timmy.
Tammy's amazing. Everybody, round of applause for Tammy, please. Tammy's absolutely amazing. As are all the Tammy, Monica, Jamie, everybody who works with me is just spectacular. I love you guys so much. Thank you. So, folks, let's get that straight. Sharon is where? Oh, Sharon, you've not heard that one? I'm surprised. It was everywhere. It's one of the things people are using to say, so people have turned the vaccine into an abortion conversation. It's one of the things being used to undermine the vaccines. And it's everywhere online, in my opinion. So, like I was saying, folks, the question is not whether or not somebody's putting a dead baby's tissue inside you. The question was a dead baby's tissue used to test or in the development process of the vaccine? And we know that in the UK, one vaccine, the answer to that question is no. So the Pfizer vaccine, the answer is no. It's the Oxford vaccine that there is evidence that it was used as part of the testing process. Right?
Yeah, the development.
It's a development process.
I don't know the exact. I was
yeah,
not in the lab.
Somewhere along the line, it was a part of the.
Line.
Okay, cool.
Yes, so, but it is not the vaccine.
All right. So the question is then. So in essence, you can then say. So Sharon, that's what we're currently answering. It is unfounded in that the vaccine does not contain the tissue. The question now is, was it used as part of the testing / development? For one of the two vaccines in the UK, the answer is yes. For the other one, the answer is no. So the question then becomes, why should I take something that benefited from abortion? I can't answer that question for anybody. I want to make that clear. I'm not going to be the arbiter of ethics for anybody. I will ask this question. Would you take an organ transplant from a murder victim? If a human being, if a grown human being was killed by a gunshot, would you say yes or no to using their organ if that organ could save your life in an organ transplant? Are you saying, if you were killed, I can't use your organ, I'd rather die? Again, I'm not saying that means you're wrong, because I realize the way I just said it could suggest that I'm just saying that's the question, and only you can answer that question. The bigger question is, well, isn't the vaccine market, and again, the COVID vaccine is not the only vaccine that uses fetal tissue in its developmental process for testing and stuff. This has been going on for at least, I'm aware about at least 10 years, perhaps a whole lot more. So you might want to go question every other vaccine you've ever taken or given your child to take. Let's not just question COVID here. So the question now is, if this thing is supporting the abortion movement or the abortion quote unquote industry, Do I want to be a part of it? Again, I don't know. I know what my answer would be personally. And it would be the answer, the same, and I'm not going to give you my answer, but it would be the same answer to the question, would I take an organ from a person who was killed if I did not kill them? Now, if I hear that somebody is intentionally killing people so that they can use their organs, that's a different story. The question is, did abortion predate COVID or not? Were babies being aborted? Again, I'm not saying I agree with it. Please hear me out. I'm just working with the reality that it exists. Were babies being aborted pre-COVID? If the answer is yes, then you can't say abortions are being created or being propagated specifically for the purpose. And if evidence of that comes to light, please, I'm the first person. I'll come to this show and I will condemn it. I will attack it. Like I said, I'm an equal opportunity backside whooper. I'll attack Democrat, Republican, conservative, Labor, right, left, center, middle. I stand on the Bible. I just hate hypocrisy. So I have enough fight for everybody. If they want it, they can get this work. If they want this smoke, they can come and get it. All right. So let's move on because of time. I think we are going to need to come back next week. So there's this issue of mRNA. Let me type out mRNA, small m dash capital R, capital N, capital A. mRNA. Which but again, please feel free to correct me, baby, but my research tells me is a part of some of these vaccines. And because it sounds similar to DNA, and it does have some connection to quote unquote the concept of DNA, one of the conspiracy theories out there is that the vaccine can be used to alter your DNA. Please explain to us what mRNA is, if you don't mind, why it's in the vaccine, and is it true that it can be used to alter our DNA or not?
Okay, so first I'm going to say that once this COVID is over, you need to take me to some high-flying beach for a holiday because your questions are intense. Okay?
I do, and I will.
I know you look after me. So mRNA stands for messenger ribonucleic acid. Now, I don't want to go into the science of this.
Timmy, mRNA equals messenger ribonucleic, ribonucleic, so messenger ribonucleic acid. What does DNA stand for, ma'am? Can you just tell us so that we see the similarity?
Deoxyribonucleic acid.
Deoxyribonucleic acid. So we're not going to type that out because of time and space, but you can see that they sound similar because they are similar, but they are very different. Deoxyribonucleic acid. In fact, let me just screenshot that real quick for the good people. Nope, not you. Let's see. Let's put it up here. So let's say DNA. So you know what we're talking about. So this is DNA. Many of you know this. You see the helix stuff. This is DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid. And let's look at the definition of DNA real quick. In essence, it's a part of your body's genetic code, in summary. It is different from what the good doctor's about to speak about. No, see, we type in mRNA and the first thing you see is vaccines. No, we're not asking for the vaccines. We want to know what mRNA is. Oh, Lord. So, messenger RNA, messenger ribonucleic acid, right? As you can see, similar but different. Can you guys see that? They work together but different. So, baby, now please break it down to us. How does this thing work?
Okay,
Or what
someone
is it?
said
How
I'm
does it
soft
work?
spoken. Wow, I'm doing my best to be on my best behavior.
She is, trust me.
Well,
I know
thank
better.
Thank you for that comment. Thank you for that comment. Okay. So I'll relate this to the COVID vaccine, to the mRNA. So messenger basically something that is sent on an assignment. Um, so basically, the DNA is what contains the genetic information, and the mRNA is just a transcription. So it gets a little bit of the DNA which is transferred or transformed. I don't want to go into the deep science of this for the sake of time, and also because that's not my area of specialty. But so there's a bit of a protein, like I had explained earlier on, from this virus. It's called the spike protein, and then that's how they create their mRNA, and then they put it into like an envelope, and then that's how they create this particular vaccine, which is the mRNA vaccine, which is different from the one I spoke about, which is the Oxford vaccine. So in terms of people's worries
So
about
pause for a second. Tell me, can you please tap that for me? So in the UK, only one of our two vaccines has mRNA or is based on mRNA.
is an mRNA vaccine, yeah.
So even if you have a problem with mRNA, even if you believe the government is trying to alter your DNA with mRNA, there's at least one vaccine that does not use mRNA.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, please put that up for us in some form. So only one of the two UK vaccines actually uses mRNA. So now that messenger RNA, the ribonucleic acid, why does it need to be in the vaccine? What's its job? What's it there to do in the vaccine?
Okay. So it's there to, when it's introduced to the body. So what happens is that it enters into the host cell. So maybe you take the vaccine and obviously goes into your arm. And then what happens is that it goes into the host, what we call the host cell. Now, in the host cell, now I want us to hear this very clearly so that we don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. Now, when it gets into the host cell itself replicates the mRNA of the mRNA that has already been introduced. When this happens, the body realizes that there is something foreign in the body and produces what we call antibodies, which you spoke about earlier on. So antibodies are like the police that are there to defend and to fight. And so loads of antibodies are produced. When these antibodies are produced, the only way a DNA can be altered is if something gets into the DNA and changes it. The mRNA, once it gets in, cannot last in the body, so it is destroyed. The mRNA that has actually been introduced to you through this vaccine does its job by letting the body produce antibodies, which means that the next time you're exposed to the disease or the virus, the antibodies are already at alert, and the memory cells are there and ready to fight this infection. The mRNA or the messenger mRNA, one, cannot remain in the human body. It is destroyed. And secondly, even if it could remain, which it doesn't, it cannot enter the DNA to alter it.
Okay, so let me see. Correct me if I'm wrong. I got my crazy analogies. For those of you who have a problem with my analogies, my wife has an even bigger problem at home. So, but pardon me, one of my analogies here. So in essence, the mRNA, it's almost like training a dog to be an airport security dog. You need to teach the dog what cocaine smells like.
Yeah.
So that when the dog sniffs someone's bag and smells the cocaine, it knows to bark. So the mRNA is it's not the only way a vaccine can be created. But remember I said at the beginning that vaccines needs to be in the vaccine that tricks your body, or not tricks, that coaches your body into producing antibodies against a specific disease. So it can either be a diluted form. In the early days, it just used to be a weaker load of the actual virus itself for the disease. Nowadays, they use things like mRNA and other things. In essence, it's telling your body, when you see this substance, fight it with this. So mRNA, which is different from DNA, which is not DNA, which does not enter your DNA, which does not adjust your DNA. In essence, people are saying that you're like a hard drive and the government is trying to upload a virus into your computer through your DNA. That's not what's happening. The mRNA's job is to trigger, it comes from the virus itself. It's to trigger
from the spike protein.
From the spike protein in the virus.
The spike protein on the virus.
On the virus, yes. So from the crown, the corona, those spiky things you see, in essence, the things that actually harm you. And its job is to tell your body, every time you're exposed to this substance, create this response to fight it. There is no medical evidence that it can attach itself to and alter your DNA. Like we also heard as well, like every other thing, and I'm trying not to get vulgar here, but every other protein-based thing, for instance, for those of you who are married, you know that you need to conceive a child within a certain window because sperms don't last forever in the body. They die out. And they contain DNA. Right? So, what are you saying that, because by that same standard, you're arguing that every time you have sexual intercourse with a person that you're altering their DNA. When we're presenting arguments from our worries ethically as the church, let's be careful that those arguments don't expose a lack of intellectual rigor. Let's think through these things. Okay, so I hope we've dealt with the mRNA side of stuff. How much more time do we have? How much more time do you have, baby, before you need to run?
As soon as you can release me, that will be good.
As soon as I can release you. Okay.
Yes, please.
So, let me see. So which of my last few questions?
Sorry, Sharon keeps asking a question. Which one doesn't use mRNA? So the one that
pause. But the reason why I don't want you to answer, I'm thinking about, because I don't want. Okay, let's make it clear. I'll let you answer it, but I'm not saying everybody should go and find the one that doesn't have mRNA and that's the only one you should use. What we're actually saying is the same way, even the one that was developed with fetal tissue doesn't have fetal tissue in it. Now, if you have an ethical issue with the fact that it used it and there's an alternative, fine. I understand that. In essence, you're saying, well, I'd rather use the one that didn't have anything to do with fetal tissue in its development because of my ethical issues with that. And therefore, since there's an alternative, I can use that one. That's fine. So in the same way, there's an alternative here. But what we're actually saying is mRNA or no mRNA, your DNA is safe. You can answer the question, ma'am. Which one doesn't use mRNA?
I'm a woman under authority, so and it's your show. So if you
no, answer it.
Okay, so the one that does not contain mRNA is the Oxford vaccine or the Ventral Vaccine.
But it's also the one that uses fetal tissue in its development, in its testing and development.
If that one goes through a process called the viral vector. So they take a virus and they weaken the virus. They take the adenovirus, which is a different type of virus, and they weaken that. That way it's not able to cause you any harm or even replicate. And then inside that virus, they insert the protein, the spike protein of there, and then they introduce that to you. That way your body produces it and in response.
So in essence, if you have ethical concerns, you're between a rock and a hard place. One of them doesn't use fetal tissue, but it uses mRNA. Again, there's no fetal tissue in the virus, in the vaccine. I'll make it clear. But its testing process involved using fetal tissue, potentially. And the other one that does not have anything to do with fetal tissue in its development, in its testing, has mRNA. So flip a coin, right? But I'm stressing the mRNA part is a red herring. Your DNA cannot be adjusted because you took a virus. It's not DNA. It's something that tells DNA, so not that tells your body, in this circumstance, fight this with this.
Yes, so, and like you said, it doesn't even stay in the body.
It doesn't last long in the body.
It's not going to stay there waiting for a few years to jump on you. No.
Okay. So, one last question. Which one do I ask? Hmm. Rather than a question, let me let you go with this, uh, folks. I've got 10 minutes to round up once she's done, and we'll be back next week. Well, I'll be back next week. I don't know if she can make it next week, but I'll be back next week. I'll see if she can, and if she can't, we'll find another doctor to replace her. Um, you're a woman, right? So
Yeah.
quote and unquote. So in essence, you belong to several quote and unquote demographics that are seen as, what's the word I'm looking for now? Seen as, anyway, you understand what I mean. So you're a woman, you're black, and therefore of ethnic minority. You're a Christian, right? And
Yeah.
unapologetically so. You're not hiding it. You're not ashamed of it. You're also a minister. You're a pastor. You're a preacher. And for the record, when we say she's a pastor, she's not a pastor's wife. She's a pastor. She has her own ordination certificate, her own licensing certificates. Up until she was pastoring a church as its resident pastor until we relocated to a city where we had to do something together. So she's a veteran minister in her own right, as many of you know. Talk to us. And by the way, has the government paid us to do this, baby?
It would be nice, but no.
Has anybody come to us now? Interestingly, for the interest of full disclosure, I have been told while we are on air, somebody has sent me a message to say some people in a local council are either watching or have been told about your current video, your current broadcast, and they want to speak to you when you're done to ask you to please serve as a bridge between the medical system and the government and the community. So I'm telling you, if I come back to you next week or 2 weeks from now, I may tell you I have been asked by the government to be an advocate, and I will always be honest with you. As of today, no. As of 1 p.m. when we started this show, nobody had reached out to me to be involved in any governmental program to draw attention to the vaccine. This was a God inspired decision, and many of you wrote me and said, please talk about it. So we're not doing this because of any pressure or any request from anywhere. Maybe can you tell the people in a few minutes as you just wrap up your segment what your suggestion or advice to them as a female black Christian minister who's also a medical doctor of a decade and counting, what your advice is on this vaccine issue? And I'm going to
Okay.
give you the full screen to say that.
Okay. I'll give my opinion on this vaccine, but there was one issue I was going to mention actually, but we can do that in the next show. So, my take on this vaccine issue, I think this is very important for me to just piggyback on something that you had said previously, that most of the people making, shall I use the word, a show about people not taking the vaccine are not even in the priority group for those who are currently eligible to take the vaccine. So that's something that is very important. Now, as a female black medical doctor, minister, child, husband, wife, mother, you name it, my advice for people is, one, stop reading and listening to conspiracy theories. Stop reading up and researching on information that is not valid, that has no known source, has no medical backing, and is not backed up by authentic medical research. It only adds to your confusion and it only causes more problems on the long run. The vaccine has been created and has been made in such a short space because of the pandemic that is killing millions of people. And so these things have been produced and they are readily available to ensure that this pandemic doesn't spread any further and to reduce the loss of life. It's been made available for a reason. If you can, and it becomes available to you, I see no reason why you should not take the vaccine. when you have done your research and there is no other indication why you cannot have it, it is there for a reason, to prevent infection and to prevent disease and to prevent death. Vaccines have always been available for many years, and we have seen a great reduction in diseases because of vaccines. I don't see why COVID-19 should be any different.
Okay. Pastor Wona said, well, so final question. I know I said that was, oh, sorry. Yeah, so final question for you, Ron. And first of all, did I share my questions with you for today?
No.
Did I give you, that's why you're saying you need a vacation for me to pay me. This was all, I intentionally didn't tell her what I was going to ask her. So to buttress that point you've just made. Now, I'm not going to say who, but we have members of our family, our extended family, who are high risk based on certain health indicators and factors. You know what? I'm actually going to say this because I spoke to him about this recently, and he told me where he stands on it and his anger at some of the conspiracies being floated about and his personal position. Both my parents, and I'm not going to go into detail, but both my parents would fall into the category of people who had high risk based on COVID. I mean, my biological parents, my biological mother, my biological father. That's all you need to know. And both of them have had it. And they will both tell you it was a horrible experience, but we thank God they came out unscathed. So, like I said, my mother and my father biological, so your mother and father in love / law, the in-laws, not the outlaws, would be offered this vaccine today if they wanted it. Would you advise them to get it?
Okay, so I think that's a very valid question. And if mom is watching, mom and I have had had conversations in private. So luckily, or shall I say, I don't want to use the word luck because we don't believe in luck, but shall I say we are blessed because both our parents have got capacity to make their decisions. They are well informed, well educated people.
My dad's a medical doctor. My mom's a pharmacist.
So in that situation, because our parents have got capacity, my job is not to say, Mom, go and have the vaccine, or Dad, do not have the vaccine. But my job is to present them with the information that is available and help them to make an informed decision, knowing their health conditions, knowing their age, knowing where they fall in the scale of, the risk versus the benefit of, God forbid, catching COVID and what happens next. So my advice would be, Mom and Dad, let us sit down, let us have an informed decision, and then Mom and Dad, you make that decision. On the other hand, God forbid, if I had parents who did not have capacity and I had to make a best interest decision for them, it will be a case of, yes, please, go and have the vaccine.
So, and it's not because you hate my mom or your dad and you're trying to kill them so I can get their inheritance and then share it with you. Okay.
No, I need my parents.
I'm just joking. Yeah, my parents actually love my wife sometimes even more, I think, than they do love me. And so, in essence, you just heard her say, for our personal family, we would say to them, there's no reason why, in essence, it's not because of mRNA, not because of fetal tissue being inside the vaccine. We do know there is the issue of the ethical side of its use in its development, but it being inside the vaccine, certainly not the mark of the beast, certainly not Satan's sperm. Your DNA is not being edited. The government is not putting it inside you. I'm going to have to let you run now. I was going to ask you about the luciferase thing, but do you have literally 60 seconds to knock that off the park?
I've got 60 seconds to talk about there's this issue about fertility, because I know quite a few people are concerned.
Fine. Okay, if possible, fertility, and also if you can address luciferase as well.
I'm not sure about the last one.
Luciferase, the light protein in the vaccine that is called luciferase. Okay, fertility.
Because it sounds similar to Lucifer.
Yes,
that one.
Yes. So address fertility, and then you can run.
Okay. So thank you very much. So luciferase, and it's like, let me just address that one, because I don't have the full details of the whole luciferase thing, but it's like you saying oh, my mobile number is 07 blah blah blah. And because Lucifer has got a mobile and his number is 07, and so because both of you have got the first two digits of your number are similar, it means you're working in some close coalition. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. So just because something sounds Luciferious, or so would you have made it any better?
Lucifer means light. Lucifer literally means light bearer. Luciferus again predated COVID. It was something used in vaccines to track their presence. In essence, when the vaccine entered the system, how long is it there? In essence, it's a protein that has luminous properties, so you can see it either under a microscope or whatever to know that it is currently there. In essence, that's all it does. And it's called Luciferus because it came from the word Lucifer. So in essence, the word Lucy, in essence, you're saying that, and there's somebody called Lucy in the comment section. Are we saying she's Lucifer? Of course not. Of course she's not. Lucy, you know I love you. So the question is, well, what if the government's trying to use it to track our movements? That's a different conversation. But in terms of for the virus itself, it's for us to know this person has taken the virus. It's still in the system. It's still viable. It doesn't need to be topped up. I'll talk about the other side of that on another show. So fertility, go for it.
Okay, so let's see, get yourself some water. There's been some issues of people being worried about fertility, and I know that there's been people who I've read up about people, and I've had questions about people who don't have children yet, who are wondering whether they should have the vaccine. So I think this whole thing about fertility and the COVID vaccine came up because there's a certain line of the cell that is similar, that has similar properties to that of the spike protein of the COVID vaccine. But my response to that is they have done a lot of research, and people who have had the COVID disease, COVID-19, have still gone on to get pregnant. And though their bodies have got the antibodies, their bodies have not fought the placenta formation. So there's been issues that the body will reject the placenta forming. No, those things are not founded, because those who have got the antibodies, their body has not fought the placenta from forming. And even with the vaccine, which produces the same antibodies as if you had the natural infection, it's only a small line of the cell that is quite similar. And like I used the number example, just because you have my number starts with 07 and yours starts with 07 does not mean it's the same number.
And just to take it further as you go, I would say that so the question is basically, will the body treat the fetus and the placenta forming like a foreign thing and attack it? First of all, that happens it's a rare condition, but it happens whether or not there's a vaccine present. So it can happen to you, God forbid. It can happen where your body treats a child like it's a sickness and starts to fight the fetus forming. It has nothing to do with the vaccine. It's a rare but existing medical condition. Secondly, the same thing could happen with you getting the virus. Because if the issue is the antibodies attack a baby, then whether you get the antibodies from the vaccine or from actually the sickness, and you are far more likely, in my opinion, for that child to be in danger if it comes from the actual virus, because you're then going to also deal with the debilitating effects of it. So put it this way, if you are the 1 in a million woman, I'm not sure whatever the risk factors are, but I'm guessing it's very, very rare. If you're Celia, no, it's not risky. This is the point we're making. The COVID vaccine itself is not going to trigger an antibody that attacks a baby.
So this is, we're not giving it out to pregnant women. So the vaccine is not going out to pregnant. We're speaking about people who are not pregnant, who are not even married, who are worried that it will affect their fertility in the future. So this is not about those who are getting to get pregnant in the next 1 month or are pregnant.
Exactly. And the point being made is there is nothing about the COVID vaccine that attacks, quote unquote, fertility in the future or even presently. The whole idea of placenta attack is a human body, is a rare condition where the human body produces antibodies that treat a baby as a sickness. It has nothing to do with the COVID vaccine. It will happen if it will happen, vaccine or no vaccine. if you are that 1 in a millionth woman who has that condition, then anything that if you catch a cold and your body develops antibodies to fight the cold, it has nothing to do with the vaccine. Baby, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. I know I told you half an hour, but I think this was necessary. At some point, I kind of figured they would much rather hear your voice than mine, although they heard a lot of mine.
Thank you.
Can we give her a round of applause? Love you.
Thank you for having me. And just to end, just to say that all these things that I have said have only been valid as at the 3rd of February between
2021
3 p.m.
Yes.
If anything changes afterwards,
she'll be back to tell you otherwise. Cool.
Thank you very much.
Love you. Take care. All right.
Love you. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
So, folks, there you have it. So my question is, we've got 2 minutes, so I don't have a question. We've only got 2 minutes to go. And so this is the part where I tell you, thank you so much for hanging with me today, where I tell you that I would love to have you back this Friday. Now, you ask, what's happening on Friday? Well, I'm glad you asked the question. We are continuing with our conversation concerning the place of women in ministry and in leadership. This week I'm flying solo, although I may bring on, I'm thinking about this, I may actually bring on a couple of, at least one woman who's in ministry to give a perspective on it. I may also bring out a man in ministry to talk about this, but we're chopping up whether on women, it's biblical for women to preach. I know the word allowed is controversial, but I use it intentionally. And I know the feminists say, why should a woman have to be allowed? Well, we're talking about some people's interpretation of what the Bible says. We started last week. I think it's clear by now, for those of you who were there last week, that I do believe women can preach. I do believe that the Bible does make a provision for that if you understand what it's really saying, and don't take just 2 scriptures, only 2. One of them that doesn't even have anything to say about the preaching, and the other one completely out of context. But let's look at it together. Let's finish this conversation. Let's chop it up. And then next week, like I said, depends on, we're going to review today and see if we've covered all your questions. If we think there are a few more things that need to be addressed, we'll be back talking about the vaccines next week. If not, so literally once this COVID vaccine thing is finished, either today or next week, the next show we have, we'll be talking about the issue of abortion. And you know me, I don't shy away. We go deep, we go in, we come out. We put all the cards on the table, and we will figure out what God really is saying and where the church should stand on not just the theology of the issue, but also how we agitate for it in a constructive yet quote-unquote non-compromising manner. Love you guys. My name has been Olumide Isiavwe, aka the Cherub. Thank you for hanging with us on the Cherub TV on a Wednesday. I'll see you on Friday at 1 p.m. for Reformation Today. Take care. Bye-bye.